You're Cosi.
All right, can we begin?
Sorry.
This is a really good book about UI. Just pass it through. I recommend it. Well, take it out of her hands. Just handing it to her. Okay. So a couple of things. So we had we did the whole product review stuff this week, progress review, and we had a big discussion this morning with our early TAs, and a couple of tidbits that I wanted to just quickly mention. One of them is that many of you are having some basic problems with your schemas. Associations, how to properly do the one-to-one, one-to-many, and so on and so forth. And that's like at the foundation of your product, so that's an area you need to really go deal with quickly and solve. And right in the hands of that, many of you are not taking advantage of resources available to you for getting help. Between obviously Stack Overflow, but then our 3 TAs who are making themselves totally available, but say nobody ever comes. That's an exaggeration. But I would like to see you guys, if to the extent that you're behind in your projects, you know, there's resources there for you to take advantage of. So you ought to be using them. And then remember, another thing I don't think I saw, although we'll see the homework from today, is I didn't see it everywhere anyway, is thinking about the goal you're going for. You know, thinking about what you want to have working at the last day and working back from that. And making sure you find yourself starting with a really gorgeous, I don't know, complicated, multi-blah, blah, blah tables and a very big homepage, but that's actually not part of your demo. So think about your demos. Script it a little bit. A lot of people don't have stories. I don't really care that much if you don't use Trello. Some of you don't like it, don't love it, whatever. But I do think that just for the proper management of your project, you ought to be thinking about exactly what the stories are so you can prioritize them, so you don't find yourself working on, you know, I just did a Twitter that's getting all these favorites. It's like going off, which is amusing. I'm going to turn it off. I said something a little provocative, which is always fun. And it's not about the color of the dress. But no, but anyway, think about the goal you're going for. Write the stories that you have down and prioritize it, because you have 3 or 4 people on the team, and you want to be able to have everybody working, you know, effectively towards getting to success. And then, not to forget that in the next few weeks there will be a peer and self-assessment exercise where I'm going to ask each of you to assess yourself as a member of the team in terms of your leadership, to what extent you're contributing to the success of the project, your contribution in terms of actually work deliverables, and your contribution in terms of the role, you know, sort of making sure everybody's involved. So the process, product, and people. Process, how does a team function? Product, how much do you contribute in terms of actual deliverables? And people, to what extent are you aware and connected with the people on the team? Okay? And you're going to do a self-assessment and then peer assessment of your peers on the team. And that's going to go into a secret algorithm from which your teamwork score/grade is going to come. It's pretty important because, as you've already, I mean, by the way, this is a very well-functioning set of project teams compared to other years. Nobody's yet been kicked off the island or escaped. And nobody's really, as far as I can tell, you know, had any real serious conflict. I mean, when you have 3 or 4 people working together, it's in the nature of things that sometimes discussions can get heated or whatever. But basically, it seems like a pretty sane set of projects, which is great. Okay. So that's basically what we saw. And you're going to be seeing your scores appear in the next day or 2 for that particular part of the work. Okay. Great. Okay, let's talk about the homework. So what do you guys think about the papers? I mean, there's a bunch of them. In fact, I added one yesterday, which, you know, because these were all up to you as to which ones you wanted to read. I didn't think it was bad, but one of my favorites is actually cleaning up your visual mess. But that was added only yesterday because I forgot to put it there. But give me some thoughts. To what extent was this instructive, interesting? To what extent was it kind of self-evident and obvious? Yeah.
I mean, we actually used that, if you remember, for the last semester
Yeah.
in Upper Mass.
Yeah.
It's really helpful in the sense of it states what's obvious, but is obvious, and you never like, oh, you just assume it is what it is.
Right.
When you actually look at it, it's like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that.
Yeah, and when you look at your work, you go like, I haven't been doing any of that stuff.
But then part of it is like, looking at it is always easier. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, of course. Yes, it is. Anybody else gleaned some insights or conversely found it to be all very boring or whatever? Not boring, but well known because you took Rick's class or whatever? Which article was your favorite of the four? Call it out.
Well, I like the effective use of white space one.
Yeah.
I think it's like it's super important, and like I did take Rick's class, and like after working through it enough times, you kind of see that it really, really is important to just even get the spacing right, and that can make a huge difference for how your form actually works.
Yeah.
I really like Clean Up Your Mess, only
Yeah.
because it felt much like, I don't know, there's a necessity to like combine like how you do software production in terms of UI to like typography.
Of course, yeah.
In terms of like how they define different fonts and how those fonts can connect the user with what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like sans serif or non-sans serif.
Graphic design is part of user interface design. I mean, of course, you're not going to turn into an expert with one class, but my goal here really is to give you some of the low-hanging fruit that anybody can apply, and turn your app from a hot steaming mess to something that looks reasonably nice. Any other comments on any of the articles that you thought were interesting or not? Yes?
For the principles of user interface design, like I thought it was pretty interesting that it was last updated in like 1998.
Yep.
All the stuff like still holds true.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and this stuff is all. I mean, if you find somebody who's like a real UI guy, and there are new principles that people have come up with in the world of iPhones and so on, things that just were not possible before, like the whole swiping thing that you don't find in any of the write-ups because it's kind of a new idea. But yeah, some of these things are eternal principles. Some of these things, I mean, especially the layout things, go back much longer into the past. That book that's going around is again a very, very pragmatic how-to book. You can, as I was telling somebody this morning, you can get very metaphysical about UI and spend hours debating things. I think this green is nicer than that green, whatever. But there's a level of like self-evidentness that I would hope that you guys will internalize and make part of your own seeing, so you will see a UI for something and immediately spot, like somebody scratching the nails on a blackboard, the things that are off. And that's the basic intuition that I think, and I'll talk about this a bit more as we go through this. Give me one lesson. Give me one lesson, one thing that you took out of those articles that you went like, wow, I definitely want to do this better, or I definitely never realized this. Yes?
Well, I mean, most of the articles were from last semester because I took your
Yep,
class then.
right.
Too. But the main thing I got out of this time was like less is more, and
Yep.
the less you have, the more emphasis it puts on
Yep.
what is there.
Yeah? How about you guys? It's been very quiet in this area here. What kind of lessons? Give me one lesson that you picked up out of the reading.
Asked if you do the readings.
Is that right? Why?
Well, I didn't think that there was.
Why?
Because I had looked on Tuesday. Is that?
I don't think that's true. It's in there.
Okay.
Anybody else? Some lesson you took out of the article? Something that you thought was meaningful, not something you just read.
I mean, the clean up your mess was like,
Yeah.
it was all pretty straightforward.
Okay, so are you applying that in your work then?
I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for anything.
Okay. Yes?
I mean, I don't know if it's obvious or not, but keeping things invisible in the sense of like they shouldn't be. Again, it's one of those things where you actually have to make an effort to make it seem that what you're doing is straightforward, but
Yeah.
actually getting that workflow is so much harder than
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Thoughts on the articles? Okay. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Font size.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, you can just like notice this if you see like I mean, I kind of already knew this in terms of if you see a movie poster and you see how big the font sizes are compared to different like where they are on the poster.
Yeah.
Which and also the roles of like what does font being italicized mean compared to font being not italicized or
Yeah.
bold? Also proximity in terms of like where different objects are grouped.
So this is interesting because I just want to put this up because you see this stuff here that nobody can ever read. You know why it's like that actually?
No one cares.
Pardon? Sorry?
No one cares.
No. Not really. No. Did you ever look closely? I mean, you can't see it, but do you ever know how the fonts are a little bit bigger and a little smaller and all this stuff, and they're all very tight? It's because those proportions are all negotiated as part of the contracts. That's why. And that's the smallest size they can get it on the page while still meeting their contract. And there's all things like proportions between the name and the other text, proportions between the headline and this, but everything's negotiated. And that's why those funny fonts are there.
Does Liam Neeson or the star also negotiate their name, or is that just
Absolutely.
Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the deal. Yeah.
Fanning took a $1 million pay. Oh, so Dakota Fanning for War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
With Tom Cruise, she took a pay cut of like 1 million, so her name would appear like as one of the stars.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's really wild. Did you know that, I'm getting totally off topic, you heard about the lawsuit about the Blurred Lines song?
Yep.
That was
Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye, yeah. So does everybody heard about this? But one interesting tidbit there is that, talk about negotiations, is that Robin Thicke actually had nothing to do with the writing of the song, but he negotiated being named as a co-author and took less money because of that. So,
Alien 3 had like 8 different writers that the WGA had to associate with, but some of the more principal writers weren't even credited on it because of how WGA rules were legislated at the time.
what does WGA stand for?
Writers Guild Association.
So let's take a look at this periodic table of the elements. Let's analyze this from the point of view of graphic design principles. Make some comments about it. Anybody? Yes.
You're using different colors to group items.
Excellent. Yes.
If you look at it, you can see that you know that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think knowing your audience is key. So like this table is designed for people who are studying chemistry, so it could be complicated.
Yep. Absolutely correct. I agree with that. Yes.
I really like how when I look at it, kind of the first thing I see in my intention to draw is the legend, so I don't get like lost in any like it just tells me like what's going on.
Yeah. Excellent. Yes. Yes.
I think like personally I would shy away from using like red and green to encapsulate things.
Yeah.
Because a good portion of the population is red-green colorblind.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Go ahead.
It's ordered by number. So like if you're 34 and you want to know where 43 is, you can traverse correctly.
Yeah. 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 Go ahead. Yes.
It's mainly used in Arial font.
Or some non.
Arial or Helvetica. Well, one of the two, because
Yeah.
those are like most commonly used font families. So they're bold, and instead of using Times New Roman, you wouldn't use Times New Roman to be part of a periodic table because that doesn't stick out as much as like a bold, heavy font.
Yeah. 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 Go ahead.
So I see the beginning of each word in the title is not capitalized. Is that a flaw?
Which were in the title?
The title, yeah.
Ah. No, I don't think it's a flaw. I mean, I don't think it's a flaw. I think it's just a choice. The question is, why is that not the biggest thing on the page? I wonder. I mean, maybe I would say that the periodic table is so well known that you don't need a title. Everybody sees the shape and knows what it is, right? And the use of color is very nice, even though I agree with the point about color blindness. But not only are the boxes colored, but the little
I thought I saw something else that was
the band at the bottom is not always light gray. Sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's yellow. So that's very rich, information rich. And then it turns out that chemically, those of you, I mean, what do I know about chemistry, but the column numbers along the top, all those threes, SE, Y, LU, and LR, have something in common in terms of their chemistry. So the layout, that's not right, it's very, very information rich. The 18s are all noble gases because they have 18, what is it, electrons? I don't remember anymore. I learned it at this very place, but I forgot. But anyway, so that's a good example.
They're also really well spaced out too. They're pretty decently spaced out. Instead of it using black lines, there's just like white lines to indicate the spaces between them, which makes it feel more clean.
Yeah, I think it's very nicely done. So anyway, yes, did you have?
Yeah, the radioactivity at the center.
Yeah, the little symbol there.
Which
Yep.
element is radioactive?
Yep, that's very cool. Yep. Oh, there it says gray is metal, orange is semi-metal, and blue is non-metal. How about which ones are gas?
The red ones are gas.
Oh, the red ones are gas. Oh, okay.
It's in Google Drive.
Gotcha, I gotcha, yeah.
Open that up.
I gotcha. Okay. All right. So, is this where you land when you first? I suppose this is where you land when you first go to the product, right?
Yep. I think if you put it into presentation, you can like click through the website.
Okay. All right. Comment about this? I like it. I think it's very good. It's very clear. Boom, big name what it is. The only thing I would suggest is not a flaw, is a little bit of text that says what the heck the site is about. Yes?
Would you suggest putting like a cool photo background behind it?
Sure. I mean, but don't spend your whole week getting that photo to be just right and arguing which photo you should use. That's a nit that you can add the last day. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's modern designs that do that all the time. They have a big picture or even a movie and stuff in front of it. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this. Let's have some comments about this. Think about it as a user. Would you know what to do? Would you know how to use it? Does it make sense? Not a bad feeling.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
That's right. Craigslist.
So how not to make it like Craigslist?
Well, that may not be a goal. I mean, it'd be good to leverage Craigslist, people that know Craigslist.
No, because Craigslist looks like literally something from 1999.
Which is basically what it is.
Yeah.
And it works very well.
Okay. So comments based on the article or anything else you see. Usability. Easy use. How would you guys? What do you think?
Well, my only question is, I wonder what they would how they would recommend a barter for me. Because is the definition of a bartering like?
Okay.
I mean, are we talking in terms of UI or in terms of
Usability. I mean, user experience.
It's pretty straightforward.
No, but that's a good. Well, I don't know. I see some things that make me wonder, but yes, go ahead.
So maybe you should one bot should be more emphasized than the others. So like the idea of the main functionality should attract my attention. Right now, all these boxes are more or less the same size, so I don't know which of the four should I look at.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, one of my, and I'll cover this in a minute when I get to my notes. One of my ideas, or one of my beliefs is that your job as a designer is to kind of get into the head of the user and try to figure out what they're trying to do at this moment, and then put that wherever their hand is going to reach next. It's kind of like if you get the car example is an old one. You know, if you get in the car, you don't have to wonder but you may have to wonder where the ignition switch is. Like I used to have Saabs for years, and the ignition switch was between the seats, and so that was not where it was supposed to be, and you would reach where it wasn't there. So here, and so the idea of and this applies not just when you first see the product, but as you use it, try to think about what is the user's motivation right now. It's kind of like acting. What is your motivation? And given that motivation, is the gesture that you're probably thinking about immediately visible? So in my case, yes, did you have a, no, okay. Yes, no, okay. A lot of false positives. In my case, I'm not sure. I think maybe I'm not sure what the most important thing is here. It's kind of what you were saying. What is my motivation? If I'm coming to a site, either I want to barter, probably I want to barter, I want to post something. probably the primary thing. So and the word post, yeah, it's pretty much in the vernacular, but it might be, you know, I don't know, but I would make that post button bigger or more prominent. Sure. My gut. Don't take that as a directive. I'm just giving you my reaction. I think.
I'm
sorry?
Yeah, I guess part of the day part of the day should be towards the left to one side, because it's not that important compared to like recommended borders, which I guess should also be on the right. Like basically flip the entire thing.
Possibly, yeah, possibly. Just think about, and then look at the nomenclature. Okay, we have the only word border chain. I mean, I kind of can guess what it is, but it may not be. I don't know if there's a better word. Terminology is very important, and you want to use words that are in the user's vernacular.
Exchange.
Nah, I don't know. We don't have to solve it right now. I'm just giving you my.
Well, it is kind of like an exchange, because it's like a pun, because there's no change involved, so therefore it's exchange.
Okay. I love that. That's awesome. And so what does feeling lucky do? This is I would want to
takes you to a random item.
Good. Good. Okay. Good. Yes.
How do you decide the barter of the day?
We're still working on that, but because there's in the items, like you can get market value by linking with like an Amazon listing, so you can do a barter of the day based on like how much money each person would have saved instead of just purchasing that item like flat out. So it's based on market price.
And then also, when I look at this, when I see our top listings, I feel like that it's confusing to me just to see an enumeration of all of the listings in a category. I would think it would be like the top listed items in like each category or something. And are those links? Can I click on like electronics and it'll take
Yeah, it was. So if you click on any of those links, it would bring you to the items page, sorted by electronics.
Okay.
And why are they top again? For the same reason as this? Why did their top list?
Just because they're the most posted. Like there's more electronics, games, auto parts than any other kinds of items.
I gotcha. And what are these numbers?
That's how many items are posted for each category. So
And
it's
what's
1,000.
what's the ordering here? I wondered about that. Seems random.
I just put them in randomly.
Okay.
So that was my bad.
Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, so this is nice. This is a classic. I assume that you click on one and the next column fills out.
Yeah. I think you can try clicking on the links up top and stuff like that. Will take you different parts of the page.
That's okay. Let's go like this. Listing items. Comments about this? You're using color. Everything looks like a cat, of course. This color means that this is this color is telling me something, but I'm not sure what.
Yeah, so the can I get it is like there's a lot of stuff going on in the algorithms, but if the user is looking for items that you have, and you have a lot of the items that they're looking for listed, then the chance of you getting that toaster with what you have is a good chance.
Oh, gotcha. Cool. I like it. And I assume these are all auto parts. That's why this is highlighted. Is that right?
You can click on auto parts and then we'll sort it by auto parts.
But this is right now underlined at that.
That's just because that's how the presentation thing does it. It makes every link like.
I got you. Okay.
Underlined.
Okay.
So that's the auto part.
So I'll make another comment, by the way, about this is very nice. You people, all being developers and software people, are likely going to want to skip this step and go coding right away. And sure. And it happens to me too. And the notion is that, look, we just discussed whether we should swap this to the left or to the right. If you had spent the last 3 days getting bootstrap panels to look just right, you know who you are, then you're going to be very upset if somebody in your team says, let's swap these two things. And this is true. This is the way, it really is true. So even though everybody wants to skip this step, believe me, do it on paper, do it in Balsamiq, whatever, but decide what you're going to code before you code it. It saves so much time. You can have a discussion with your teammates with this, or even better, in a different scenario, with a potential customer. Do you understand this? You know? Take this to heart. It's going to save you a lot of time.
Show like a non-computer science person this.
Pardon?
Show a non-computer science person.
Of course. But even if you're not planning to do that, even if you're just coding it and you want to finish it by 6 weeks from now, man, you'll save a lot of time if you decide what you're going to code before you code.
Just a suggestion on that is the fact that make offer is in red is like, should I be clicking this should not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the text is in blue.
Yeah. 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 Okay, and this is the Shu Chen's page. Okay, I think we've done enough. This is very nice. It's nicely done. And it looks like and they went one step further, or I should say you went one step further, in that they actually thought about the flow and exactly how the logic of the app is supposed to work, which is another level beyond just what it's going to lay out. Because you have to decide, what's actually in here, what's red, what's not, what's green, and that's really good. Okay, I'll stop with this one. And there was one more, but I don't even know the file type, so before I open it, I will...
It's the balsamic.
Oh, okay.
Command Shift 4, screenshot.
Oh, it's just a screenshot?
No, you converted. That's what I checked.
What is this file type? BMPR?
I just took it directly from Balsamic.
Oh, it's Balsamic?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't think I have Balsamic.
Oh, okay, that's totally fine.
I think you can use it in the website, in the web app. Yes. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh God, license? No, I don't have a license. I have no stinking license. No. Okay, forget that. We'll skip it. We'll look at it offline, so I don't make you guys wait. Okay. Again, we're going to give this kind of scrutiny to the ones that the other 5 teams submit by the end of today. So please take the time to do it, and remember, it'll save you time later when you actually go code it. Okay. Come on. Okay. So, and I already realized you could click on this, but can you see this picture? So the question is, do you know how to operate this device? And if so, how, and how do you know? Huh?
Do you know how to operate a door?
Yeah, do you pull it or push it?
I do both.
Do you pull it or push it?
Oh, there's a sign.
Both.
You can do both.
I do both, because I don't bother reading a sign that says push.
Where's the sign that says push? Oh, there it is.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay. What if the sign wasn't there? Would you pull or push?
I would pull. Definitely.
There's only 2 actions you can take, so either way, you're going to get it right.
So you don't care?
I don't care.
And maybe one day you're going to break your nose on a window, which I know it happened. The door didn't go the way they thought. Okay, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Over there, I feel like pulling.
You feel like pulling it? Okay. So, yes? Okay. Let's look at the next one.
Ooh, that's cool.
How do you operate this thing?
Push with your hand.
Where do you push? Well, I guess you know it now. The first time you saw it, did you do it wrong? I did.
I don't remember.
I
Might
did.
have.
Okay, so where do you push?
There's like a tiny little arrow, I think, in the thing that you're supposed to push down.
Right, like at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I'm like.
Pardon?
This might be overthinking it, but I also know from design usually there wouldn't be that slit right at the bottom there unless they're expecting someone to push against it.
This here?
Yeah.
That thing? Yep, that's a good point. Actually, the first time I saw this, which is years ago now, I was actually puzzled because I kept pushing on this thing. Okay? Happened to you?
Well, I was in Sweden and I was trying to push the crosswalk.
Yeah.
And then it was like I couldn't read Swedish, so
Yeah.
there was like the button below, and then there was like it was like either a panel or button, and there was something above, and I was like slapping both, and eventually it worked.
How about this one? What would you do with this one?
You turn the bottom one and then you turn the top one.
You turn the bottom one and
then you turn the top one.
Okay, you actually know this, don't you?
No, I mean I'm just like
Yeah.
intuitively looking at it.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is something that in design we call affordances, okay, which is that aspect of a device that communicates to the user what kind of motion it affords, what kind of functionality it affords, what can you do with this. Do you remember when I was struggling with this thing and I was trying to make this whole thing go away and I couldn't figure it out? this thing has very bad, I mean, I had discovered this by, so when you examine something, when you see it for the first time, how do you know how to work it? Okay? And that principle of affordances, now you'll find certain things, obviously, like your iPhone, you know, when you first, in fact, when I first, I don't know how Android works, but literally, can you guys see this? Literally, when I saw this screen and I wanted to kill an app, I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. I had to go to them.
Yep.
A lot of people can't even get to that screen.
Nope. Yeah, well, that's different, yeah. Yes, was that a thing? Yeah, I know. I found out now. Yes, but the point is, but this is interesting because this is no indication whatsoever that that's how you do it.
Well, there used to be an X.
Now it's not. Yeah, now it's more pure. But so that the idea of affordances are not obviously an absolute. People will definitely do things without affordances. A, because it's maybe you find out once and you'll know it forever, or B, because you don't mind if somebody has to struggle because eventually they'll get it. Yeah.
I mean, what about Maverick's UI?
Which I don't remember anymore. What
Oh,
was
like that right now, like.
That's Yosemite.
This is Yosemite.
Oh, I'm dumb. Okay, Yosemite.
Yeah. What about it? Oh, shall we look at it? Okay. What are some of the bad things about this UI actually?
I mean, I heard a criticism that basically Yosemite looks like it comes from the 1970s.
Really?
I haven't heard that. That's a good thing. It's a nice retro.
I think one of my pet peeves with Yosemite is that this has always been the case. There's 3 traffic lights on the left. I can never remember what the green one does.
Well, they changed it.
Full
The
screen's in now.
green, yeah, the
But
green
it's
is
still,
full screen.
but yeah. Anyway, So this is my personal distillation of rules of thumb for UI design. Okay? Oh, I have more. I forgot I had that one. But don't worry about it though. I think once it starts scrolling, you can't stop it. Okay, here we go. So the first one is pay attention to affordances. Okay? I hope that you become aware of affordances. So whenever you walk up to a door or go into a foreign country's bathroom or find a new vacuum cleaner, that you observe and say, how was I supposed to know how to do this? And it happens all the time. It happens all the time. In some classrooms, there's this very elaborate glass panel here. It's like an iPad-like thing. You push it to turn the lights on bright, dim, or whatever. And I go like, how is that an improvement over a couple of switches? I don't understand. So I want you to start thinking about affordances because it applies totally to your product as well, to your software design as well. And that's what we were asking before about are those things buttons or not. Things that are buttons, things that are pushable should look pushable. Things that are not pushable should not look pushable. And
What defines pushable?
Well, very excellent question, because this is all within a certain cultural context. And cultural, in what I mean here is Mac versus Windows versus Android versus iPhone.
I mean, in essence, you can break down to like binary, if it's on or if it's off.
Mm-hmm.
So what philosophically defines off and what defines on?
Well, first of all, what does it look like to allow you to see that it's either that you can even push it one way or the other? And then once you know you can push it, then how can you tell whether it's? I mean, I was using a product where a certain button actually it was in Gerstenstein 124. The mute button on this thing was red and green, and for me, I didn't know whether the red meant push me or don't push me. It was just a bad signal. You know what I mean? Yes.
I think culturally, if it's a link that you can push to go to a form or something like that, it's usually blue and an underline, right? And
the underline is no longer happening much anymore, actually.
Okay.
But
So-
it's still blue often, and certainly it responds to the mouse. Yeah.
And if it's a pushable, usually they go for like a button, right? Like encapsulated inside a button. Like
Yeah,
like
but
that.
you'll find plenty of examples in user interfaces which, with things that don't look, but you guys probably don't know these things are buttons here. These two blue thingies, they're buttons. Okay, so that's bad UI on my part. You probably don't know that well, maybe you would be able to guess if you hit enter, but there's nothing that says hit enter to execute the search. So pay attention to affordances. Now, it's one thing for a website that I built for myself to use, and it's one thing for you in a homework assignment, but if you're at a company or have a job or start a company and you're building something you want 100 million people to use, these things are the difference between life and death.
Know your audience?
Know your audience, yes. and know how much time your audience is willing to invest in learning your app. You know, when we all download an app on our phones and it's free, if within 5 seconds it does not do what we think it ought to do, we delete it. That's about how much time you have. Okay, so it's really important. Okay, let's go on to the next one. The next one is know the answer to the question. Who is my user and what is their motivation? What are they thinking about? Okay, now many apps are for many different users, right? In the case of the campus GPS thing, there'll be people that are visitors to campus, there'll be people who are students and live here all the time, and there'll probably be college administrators who are trying to administer and add new buildings. And each user has a different amount of patience to use the product, has a different motivation to use the product, and has different alternatives. And if you're using something on a phone, you've got to be aware of that, because when people use things on the phone, their ability to attend to it is very, very limited. So be aware and express it to yourself, express it to your team. I'm building this thing, or this part of my product is meant for people meant for students, meant for professors, meant for buyers, meant for sellers, meant for drivers. But know who your audience is and who is the user is at that point. Now, for projects where people invest a lot of time on user experience, there's a process that people often talk about called defining user personas. And that's just, again, a buzzword, and people can go crazy with this thing, but it is basically to articulate that for my product, I have basically 3 kinds of users. I have administrators, I have software developers, and I have managers. And then you can go further and express what the context is of that person. You know, how experienced are they with computers? How much time do they have to devote? All these things, and define all the personas. And within any part of your product, you can think about how would the administrator deal with the screen? How would the programmer deal with the screen? If this sounds all very like purist, believe me, when you're building a real system and not a toy in a class, those are the things that will make or break a product. So thinking about who the user is, what the categories of users are, where they're coming from, how much time they have, how much investment they have. I mean, look at Latte, right? There's Latte for the professor, who's very, very invested in getting it to work, and so is willing to put up with more nonsense. There's Latte for the student, who's a lot less invested, except they want to submit their homework. And each one, you can tolerate complexity to a different degree. So know your user, very, very important, okay? Then another part of knowing your user is knowing what their assumptions are about software. You know, if I'm a Mac user, then it's certainly useful if my app, if an app addressed to me follows Mac conventions. However, if I write an app for the Android, it doesn't do any good if I'm following Mac conventions. And then there's other conventions that go beyond the visual. Like on the Mac, there's always an undo button, an undo command. And if there's no undo command, you have a non-compliant app. Okay, so you have to have that. On Android, there's a back button. The back button does something very different. The back button does not exist on an iPhone, does not exist on the Mac. It's a unique thing. You have to get into the head of the Android user to implement a good back button. If you don't implement a good back button, you've got a bad Android app. Okay? So you got to think about that stuff. Be aware of what the assumptions are that the user brings to this. This one is really important. Okay, and people stumble on this one so big. So your app has a certain schema, a certain database, a certain set of tables, whatever. That's different from what I call the conceptual model or the metaphor that you want the user to develop about your product. You have to think about how the user is going to, because human nature is, if I give you a little machine and you start pushing, like I hit the switch, and the light goes on. Hit the switch, the light goes on. I'm going to go, okay, I understand now. There's probably a connection between this, and when this button is up, the light is on. With your software, it's the same thing. They're trying to make a model of what's going on. If you don't mold that user model, if you don't design it, and sort of have in your head how you want the user to think about your app, they're going to struggle with it. Okay? So let's take Campus GPS. Where's the team? Okay, so what do you think the user model is? How do you want the user to think about your app? What are the things in your app that they are operating? Do you understand my question at all? It's kind of an abstract question. What are the building blocks? So, does anybody have maybe I picked the hard one. Anybody want to answer that question for your product? what is the user model? What are the, let me give you an example, okay? Within Latte, you don't know Latte, within Google Drive, something we all confuse it on. Google Drive has basically the metaphor of a hierarchical file system. You can be sure that in the back end there is no hierarchical file system. That's not how it's being managed at Google, for sure. It's being managed in something much different. But they decided that in the worldview of the user, the notion of a hierarchical file system was something they understood. And they do a lot of things to reinforce that user model, to make them believe that that's what's there. So therefore, I expect that I can rename a folder. And I expect that if I store a file in one folder, it's not going to be in another folder. And I expect that if I delete a file, it disappears and either goes into a trash can or is gone for good. And I expect that I can drag a file from one folder to another. Those are all expectations that I got because they convinced me that the metaphor they wanted me to think about is a hierarchical file system. Okay? So in Campus GPS, I have to think about it. I don't have a good answer to what the user model is. But you want to make it so that when the user first picks this thing up, they immediately, I mean, maybe there's a GPS, like a thing in your car, because you called it that. So in a GPS in my car, there's a map, and there's a place that says from and a place that says to. So maybe your user model is a GPS. Or maybe you use a model in the modern version of GPS, which is Google Maps on a phone. So maybe that's what it is. But you got to think about, but then that creates certain expectations in the user. How about you guys? What is your user model? Bartering.
Craigslist.
Yeah, that's not bad. But then I would go look at Craigslist and look at it, and then you're making the assumption that a lot of your users know Craigslist. It could be eBay.
I mean, it could even be
because eBay and Craigslist are similar but very different.
It could even be kind of like a well, because it is a barter system, like a market. Like,
yeah,
like
Amazon.
Well, not even Amazon, just like in real life.
Or like a marketplace.
Like a marketplace.
Yes, yes, yes.
And by marketplace, I mean, I don't mean like a mall. I'm talking about like, what's the thing called? Where's like
a farmer's market.
Like a farmer's market.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Where you can like barter things down in terms of price. Where you can like talk to people about price, or you can even just exchange. If you have like corn, you can change. You can exchange it for like, I don't know, milk or something.
Right, right. So, yes?
I was just about to say, just for the basic functionality, I guess our user model would be any shopping website. So in terms of payment, you just don't pay with credit card or cash.
Yeah.
You pay with the stuff that you have uploaded.
Right. So that's excellent. So one tricky thing you guys are going to have is what does a shopping cart look like, and what is a price in this world? To what extent are you going to try to build on my knowledge of a shopping cart? Or to what extent, if you start calling it a shopping cart, am I going to get confused because there's things that are just going to be so different? You have to decide that. So that's what and again, I realize time is short. I'm not saying that, oh my God, you guys have to go redesign your products to have a fantastic user model. But I'm saying that this is just for the future. When you build an app, when you design it, getting in your mind how you want your user to experience your product, and what are the building blocks in their mind, and what are the experiential references that they apply, is the key to it. And if you ever find yourself totally confused by a piece of software, ask yourself if you're getting confused because you don't quite understand what it is that they're trying to show you. I know with, not to pick on William, but I know with TeachBack, I have a terrible problem with the user model. I don't understand it, I really don't. And I'm always pushing the wrong buttons and getting the wrong results. So think about, sorry, yes?
So basically we should try to like design a product that a 95-year-old can use.
No, not necessarily. No, because it's a children's toy, then who cares about 95 years?
Okay, 5-year-old can use.
No, I think you have to design a product for your target. Was that a joke? Sorry.
Yeah, in terms of making it as simple as possible.
Yeah, maybe, but not necessarily, right? Because if I'm building a piece of software to operate an MRI machine in a hospital, that has user experience, but I don't want to make it simple. I want to make it sure that no mistakes are made and that people don't get irradiated at the wrong time. So no, I think it totally depends on the application. It's not a simplicity argument. It's an appropriateness to the user argument, and it's a thinking in terms of realizing that the way humans perceive a piece of technology is by trying to create a map in their mind of what it is that they're seeing. And building a user interface is all about creating an illusion. It's like a movie or a play. You're creating an illusion, and you want to make sure the illusion doesn't fall apart. Okay. Let's talk about words. Words are really, really important. Words are really, really important. When you pick words for your product, think about the words that you pick and how will the user understand them, right? Never invent a word if a word exists. Never call the thing a file container if you could call it a folder. Don't call the thing a theme if you could call it a category, because you kind of know what a category is. Don't, you know what I mean? It's very tempting to make up your own words, but don't do it, because if your goal is to get people to see your product and know how to use it and pay money for it, then you want to build on what they know. Now there may be legitimately, like a multi-level, whatever you call it, multi-level barter. There really isn't a good word for that. You may think hard and come up with a word that is sort of metaphorically analogous, I don't know. But for the things that they know in their vocabulary, use it. This enforces or reinforces your metaphor as well, right? Because if you make like take a shopping cart, that's perfect, right? A shopping cart is a thing that people are familiar with, and even though the model is not precisely the same, it is enough to allow them to leverage it. They didn't call it a shopping, but they could have called it a shopping bag, but shopping cart's a little better. So think about the words. Don't invent words unless you have to. Make sure the words come out of the vocabulary of your user, and make sure that the words are reinforced by the metaphor, and the metaphor is reinforced by the words. Words are really important, really, really important. Also think about the gestalt of your product. When I look at your product for the first time, like that chart, the big things are going to catch my eye. The big things should be the stimuli that first start informing the metaphor that you're trying to build in my head. Okay, now let's talk about some much more graphic design things that people always get wrong. Okay, remember, every product more or less has some kind of hierarchy. There's always a hierarchy. This chart has a hierarchy. This page has a hierarchy. I'm not talking about a folder structure. I'm talking about a visual hierarchy. The container, the subcontainer, the bits within it. And make sure that you use visual cues to reinforce and not contradict that hierarchy. Okay? And that means that the top of your hierarchy should have probably the most visible name. Bolder maybe, a little bit bigger, slightly different color, whatever it is. Okay? And the things below it that are lower in the hierarchy should be smaller. The other thing people know is that when two things are close to each other, they're assumed to be related. And when they're further from each other, they're assumed not to be related. So the proximity of things also is feeding into the user's building up of their mental model. They're assuming the things that are close together are somehow related. That becomes part of their mental model. Okay? Next, there's a visual, it must be learned, but whether it's learned on a computer or in type or wherever, but there's a visual interpretation that tends to go from left. Now, I don't know how it works in countries that have scripts that go the other way around. You guys can tell me. So I'm just talking about the world that I know of. People tend to read the and you've seen this before, obviously it's not that new, but I want to just reinforce it. If this is the canvas that they're looking at, they're going to assume that this thing here is going to be the most important, or maybe the thing in the middle is going to be the most important because it's biggest, and then they're going to read down, and the fact that it's down on the page means it's subservient, and the fact that it's to the right means that it's subservient. So you end up with, display like this, or, so this distance implies to me that this is subservient. The fact that this is closer, that this distance is smaller than this distance tells me something that these guys are grouped together. So top left to bottom right, proximity implies relationship. Prominence comes from the size of the image or the text or the color or the typeface, and left to right implies substructure as well. And just about any product, a visual product, follows that kind of that kind of visual language. Now, somebody who comes from a country where the language is written the other way around, right to left, which of you come from a country like that? I know some of you.
I don't, but I've been on many Israeli sites.
Yeah, and?
Right to left, and the hierarchy goes from right to left.
It does go, which kind of makes sense. How about other countries that are, like the Middle East, other?
We're bottom to top.
Pardon?
Bottom to top, like Japanese kanji.
And how do the sites look there?
I mean, I never read it because I can't read kanji, but
I'd like to have somebody with first-hand experience.
They're still top down.
Huh?
They're still top down.
And how about right to left versus left to right?
It's, I think.
Like Arabic? Any of you speak Arabic? Any of you speak, yes?
I used to use some Arabic when I lived at home, and
Yeah.
it's still top down. Everything is shifted from right to
Right to
left.
left, it's still top
But
down.
it's still top down.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, yeah. You guys have used Windows, so here's a contradiction. Windows has a start button at the bottom left which shoots upwards. I can remember when that start button first came out, and people loved it actually. Nobody ever complained about it.
wait, why? Like when it first came out, what was the idea behind it?
It was, what am I supposed to do? It's what I said before. It's like you're looking at a screen, and people would go like, okay, I don't know what to do. And so they called it Start, and they put it there, and boom, it was a huge breakthrough. And it's one of the articles talks about the blank page problem, you know, and many software products I've worked on, you know, when like if you're writing it's got to be something new. Everybody knows text editor now, but if you create a new course in Latte, you get a big blank screen. And there really isn't any guidance to tell you how to fill it. And you have to go, what I did was I went to look at other people's and understood the purpose of that front page. And forget about it in Latte, there's this place where the grades live and the place where the lectures live, and there are different places where it takes you like a year to understand that because they're not really connected well. So that was the purpose of the Start button, and they got the license to the Rolling Stones song Start Me Up, which was a big breakthrough, like in the 90s, to get sort of a rock and roll songs promoted. Anyway, so that was that. And then of course they got rid of the Start button in Windows 8, and then they brought it back as Windows 10. Very interesting. Okay, so proximity implies relationship. This book is called Don't Make Me Think. I recommend it. I send it around. And this is a very important principle. Don't make the user, if the user is expending mental energy trying to figure out what to do next, you have failed. Okay? You don't want them to be wondering, where am I in the product? You don't want them to wonder, how did I get here? You don't want them to wonder, how do I get out of here? You don't want them to wonder, how do I do what I want to do? You need to make it, and then of course he says, and what are the most important things on the screen? You show them a big, like 5 boxes with lists, like you guys had, sorry, because it's only 2 I can look at, and the users go like, what's the most important thing on the screen? So if you find yourself looking at a piece of software and going like, I got to think about this, then the designer has failed. Okay, so the same thing with you. Okay. I'll skip mobile and just go to this one. Complexity. And I sort of alluded to that in the MRI machine example, right? Some people accuse Apple software of being unnecessarily overly simplified. That, you know, if you're trying to edit a movie or you're trying to edit a photograph, you know, it's okay, you're a professional, you need a 747 cockpit to do this, and trying to make it look really simple doesn't help the beginner and doesn't help the professional.
I know. I mean, most people who do like mainly just use Adobe or like
Yeah.
for creative products.
Not iMovie.
No one uses
Or
iMovie
whatever
anymore.
because it's too simplistic.
Well, not only that, it's so simplistic that it's really complicated to use.
Okay. Which I find it very confusing. I don't do any.
Yeah, I mean, when Final Cut Pro 7, this is film and stuff, but when Final Cut Pro 7 came out, it was very easy to use because it felt like you were actually editing on on like a movie editing thing.
Yeah.
But when Pro X came out, it was just no one really knew how it worked.
Right. They couldn't form a metaphor. They couldn't form a mental model. What am I looking at? What is this supposed to, what are my assumptions supposed to be here? Dealing with complexity. A good in situations like that. Simple things should be simple to do, and complex things should be possible. That's a way to think about it. Okay, you can't take away the complex things because if a legitimate user has a legitimate need, they need to have a way to do it. But you can make it so that it doesn't get in the way of the beginning users. There's another principle of progressive disclosure, and that is the principle of saying, I'll start simple, and once you master that bit, I'm going to show you more complexity. There's also the principle of where do you put the controls? There are the controls that are on the front, there are the controls that are on the back, there are the controls that are behind a little door. Okay? And the idea was, obviously, the ones that are in the front, this does not work with this machine at all, that are prominent are the ones everybody needs to use, and the ones that are less prominent are hidden. Now, where's the power switch on this thing? I challenge you to find. Here it is. Why is it there? It's not even in my field of view when I'm sitting here. I would like to have it here. I'd like to have it here somewhere. Okay, and of course, yes, you probably should document and have the manual, but nobody will read it. Nowadays, software needs to be used without any supporting document. Nowadays, doing a short video is a very good alternative. People will sit still for a minute or two video, but nobody reads a manual, so there are no manuals anymore. Okay. In conclusion, I skipped this fun exercise. I never get to it. Okay. I hope that I heightened your awareness of some of the nitpicky things that make the difference between a piece of software that is usable, easy to use, easy to understand, and one that is not. And I hope that you, every time you see a machine or a door or an instrument or a bit of technology, you're going to start being very critical about its affordances and how am I supposed to know this. When you look at a remote control, talk about the abominations of the universe. TV remote controls. They're a nightmare of usability, right? Am I right? But imagine if somebody's told you to redesign it. And the technology people say, listen, we have this multi-frame slow-mo feature with image interpolation. You got to put a button on there for it. And that's how it happens, you know? We spend all that, or worse, yes, we know the remote control is unusable, but the fact is, by the time they're looking at the remote control, they've already bought the damn thing. What I want is to be able to put it on the spec sheet. I don't really care if it's usable. That's Samsung's philosophy, I think. Okay. Okay? So, you know, I try to make this part of your language, think about this, and then try to apply it. It's hard to apply, but it's really important. Okay, that's it for now. Let's look at the homework for next time. Tuesday is the 17th. And basically, get to work the part 2 of the toy form rail example. Okay? Some of you might have already done it, which is fine. But basically, I think it's going to be difficult for some of you, but make sure you do it. Don't find the code somewhere and copy and paste it. You're not helping anybody, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And put it up on GitHub, submit the URL, submit the link to a very short screencast demonstrating that it's actually working. Okay? And then on Wednesday, lab, I have a half an hour Heroku review for everybody. Heroku and, what's it called? Not rocket ship, but the code ship. Okay, so we'll cover that again, slow-mo, so everybody can see it. All right, thanks a lot. See you next week. Thank you. Okay. Instead of Monday? Okay, if you think you're okay. Yeah, it's okay with me. Okay. Send me an email. Can I borrow this? Okay. Why? I'd love to borrow it, send it, but 9 out of 10 times I don't get it back. Yeah, no, you got it. And I hate to paint you with the brush because you probably would bring it back, but I've lost so many books I have to go on long drives to go pick it up at somebody's apartment. But it's really excellent. It's not that expensive. I suggest you get it.
Google it.
Oh yeah, PDF.
This is a second edition. It may not be out in bootleg yet. I don't know.
Also, second edition.
Yes.
So for Monday, there's like a Twitter version.
Yeah.
So it needs to be a fully functional one?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I will be
It's big. It's a lot of work, I know, but I want to get people to a certain.
So yeah, what we have right
Not
now
the,
is.
not the API part, so the
Yeah, so
interactive part.
yeah, so what we have right now is like log in, log out, post tweet, and then search text.
Look at all, the list is there, yeah. How about following somebody, stuff like that?
Not yet.
Okay, so basically the whole. So you're basically on your way, once you got that, you're on your way.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that's what it was.
that's correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
All right.